We give $50 billion a year in foreign aid. And in Egypt, we gave them $1.5 billion to a country that continues to become more extreme. We have Syria, we have all these countries who hate us. So the question is, why do we continue, in light of our economic problems, why do we continue to give foreign aid to countries that hate us, and we're giving all this money to Islamic extremists? So the question is, $50 billion, and recently Forbes magazine called South Carolina one of the death spiral states, because now we have more people depending on government than the private sector. So why are we giving $50 billion, which is basically wealth redistribution, to other foreigners and not putting our country first?
There's no doubt we have about 60% of Americans receive something from the government, without any question. Way too high. We need to drive that down. We have a spending addiction, without question. There was an opportunity for us in the Senate to make a decision on our foreign aid to Egypt. Classic example, the Rand Paul amendment back about 2 months ago to not provide more resources to the country in the form of F-16s and tanks. I voted not to give that money because we ought to question what we get in return for our investments, but we ought to analyze how to make the America safer by our foreign investments. And Egypt's a classic example. And as we move forward, if we find ourselves in a position where Egypt's military action becomes defined as a coup, we'll be in a stronger position to cut off that aid, because we certainly cannot fund coups. And so until we get to that point, you'll hear myself, Ted Cruz, Rand Paul, and others take a strong stand on questioning what do we get on the return on the investment for the money that we're giving out throughout this world.
Let me just add to that. Everything Tim said is just spot on right. We've got to quit giving money to countries that hate us. They can hate us for free. Okay. And we've got to quit funding the Islamic extremists and radicals. But with the case of Egypt, what makes it a very difficult situation for us with foreign aid to Egypt, not counting the F-16s and tanks that we get. We can cut that off. It's military aid. But my understanding is that the Camp David Accords, when Egypt and Israel decided they weren't going to fight anymore and they kind of had a standoff peace there, is that Egypt would get 50% of what we annually gave to Israel. That was part of the deal, negotiated by Carter, if I'm correct. And if I'm not, just tell me. But that's my understanding. So we're obligated under a treaty, not anything Tim and I voted on, but under a treaty of 1978, I believe, 77, 78, Camp David Accord, that said we have to give Egypt 1/2 of what we give Israel. But Tim's exactly right. If this is declared a coup, a military coup, there is a facet in the law that says we don't give them anything because we don't fund military coups. So that's where it muddies the water a little bit. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that's what muddies the water. If I had my way, we would not fund the Muslim Brotherhood at all. Because the Muslim Brotherhood is not friendly to the United States.